This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chat with nature, hurling and dog lover Anne Harrington Rees. When Anne says that nature is my reason for being, it's my whole life, you know she means it. After a debilitating illness, the Kilkenny native, Anne, had to give up her landscaping career, and she then turned to arts and crafts when she recovered. She now runs a successful business, Anne Harrington Rees Designs, inspired by her love of nature. She chatted about the challenge of running an arts and crafts business, the very special relationship that we have with dogs, the practice of green sketching, and why she loves selling at markets. Let's hear from Anne. A huge welcome to Anne Harrington Rees to the Win Happy podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Greg, and thanks so much for inviting me to come on. It's lovely to be here.
This all started when I'm minding my own business. Well, I wasn't actually. I'm struggling around the Skibbereen market, the wonderful Skibbereen market, on a hot Saturday during the summer. They weren't all hot.
No,
and
not this year.
Yeah, exactly. And I had Honey on the lead, and she's dragging me around the place and getting freaked out by people here and there. And suddenly I hear a friendly voice, and it was yourself. And you were there with your stand, I know, Anne Harrington Rees Designs, of gorgeous products. And I think you spotted that I was struggling a little bit and offered me some water for Honey.
That's right.
And we ended up having a chat, and it was good to get reacquainted. I think we first met on some Leo social media course or something, probably during COVID, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was well before that. It would have been, maybe 2017. Around then, and it was in the International Airport Hotel in Cork, I think, looking back, and Alma was with you.
Wow, actually that would have been one of the few times I'm thinking that I would have done that training with Alma, because that was a transition. I was saying Alma was learning all of that, so yeah, and she's a brilliant trainer now and a social media professional. They were the good days. At that time, as you say, we were doing all of that in person. So I used to look forward to the coffee break. So you get a chance to meet everyone, which was really lovely.
And I think for me, I'd just been, well, not anti-social media, but keeping away from it. And it was a complete introduction to Instagram. And yeah, so that started me off on it, really.
You were dragged into that world kicking and screaming.
Exactly, yeah. Still kicking and screaming a bit, but there you go.
Yeah, and being honest with you, I understand it. I understand why there's a lot of strong voices about staying off it as much as you can, if at all possible. But of course, it is a way for us to access the outside world. I think it shifted as well, by the way. I do think it shifted. I thought in those days, before everything wasn't show me the money on social media, and where the algorithms weren't choking the life out of a lot of your content, it was a time when if you put your good, solid content out there, it was relatively easy to connect with other social media users. For the most part, a lot of the platforms are very positive and friendly, and I think a lot of that has changed.
It has. And I know, and I guess a lot of businesses, if they're small enterprises, one-man band, one-woman bands, you can't do everything and you have to pick and choose. And Instagram, for me, I don't know how many followers I have. It doesn't matter to me. It's more the connections, and I've made some fantastic connections and good friends through it. Twitter, I tend to go on and give out about the state of the condition of the environment and how nature is treated and how dogs, particularly lurchers, have been treated in Ireland on Twitter. But there's, well, X as it is now, but there's so much negativity on there now. I tend not to go on that much. We spoke about Niall Harbison there earlier. He's one of the reasons I do stick on Twitter and on Instagram, because he's just fantastic. He's a voice for the voiceless animals, dogs that he's looking after. Yeah, it has changed. And it is difficult if you're a small business to get your word out there unless you're paying lots in advertising, which I'm just not getting involved in.
Yeah, and that changes the dynamic because suddenly the organic, authentic post by Anne suddenly has the word sponsored or ad that goes, and it changes that dynamic and that relationship between you and the reader a little bit. Now, having said that, if it's with some good targeting, you spot an item that you're very interested in, you press the button, and before you know it, you purchase something. And I've been that soldier. I've definitely purchased bits and bobs online. Sometimes the purchases work out quite well.
You have heard of filters, Greg, haven't you?
Yeah, this is true. Yeah, I did end up with a very unusual pair of runners. They were very well made, but I was told very clearly, you are not wearing those things, which was good advice. So sometimes, and when you're looking at an item on your phone, is it like a centimeter or whatever? You're looking at that, oh my God, that looks lovely. And suddenly it arrives in the box and it's a full life product. And okay, looked a lot better on that little centimeter screen.
I think the thing is just if you see spot, well, unless you know the person involved with these sponsored ones, just scroll through very quickly or just switch off those notifications, and that gets over that one very quickly.
Yeah, that's true. So what I'd like to do is we started our conversation about the market in Skibbereen. And I'd like to finish the podcast by bringing people back to the start and talking about the market. But what I'd like to do now is let's fill the gaps in between.
Oh, God. So, how long have you got?
Yeah, I know. And you've got an interesting story, and I've done my little bit of research. So I'm going to start by asking one of my favorite questions. Who the hell are you and where did you come from?
Well, I'm Anne, originally from a little village called Ballyhale in County Kilkenny, which some people may have heard of because of the hurling club that we have there, which my dad played with when we were little. And then gradually my sister and my brothers and myself all played as well, played hurling in Camogie with the club. So that's where I started off. Went to school there, went to school in Kilkenny College where my dad taught, and then went on to university, starting first year in Galway and then completing in UCD. I did a landscape horticulture degree. It was a throw up between that and doing art in Waterford, I think I got at the same time. But you know, when you're a teenager and you're not quite sure, and parents suddenly say you're never going to make a living from art, so do the other one. So I did my landscape horticulture. So I was combining my two interests of being outdoors and drawing. And I loved it. I really enjoyed the course. Made some great friends, some of whom still in touch with. We've a WhatsApp group, which, yeah, interesting conversations there 30 years later. I organised a reunion for the gang last year in Kilkenny, and it was really good to see people and catch up and hear what everyone had been up to. And from then, I went on to the UK. I was lecturing in horticulture in a college in Suffolk for 3.5 years. And that was some experience, having gone through the Irish education system and having to learn a whole new system of NVQs and, well, national vocational qualifications, I think they were, and national certificates, and dealing with people older than me who had been interested in horticulture all their lives. And I was suddenly trying to tell them what to be doing. And anyway, it was an interesting college. There was a mix of floristry, horticulture, organics, conservation, farming, lots of really interesting people to get to know. And it was there that I met my husband, Dave. So he's Welsh, and he was on a course, postgraduate diploma course in conservation management. And I think we probably started chatting around the time of Rugby International's 5 Nations, 6 Nations. He was wearing a Welsh jersey and I was winding him up. We still do over rugby, and if we beat New Zealand and Wales win their game, we may end up Wales-Ireland in a World Cup semi-final. So I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll see.
It's probably a good thing. And tell me, did you say your dad was a teacher?
Yes, Dad taught science. Yeah, he did.
And did he teach that in the school, or did he teach that under the four walls, under the roof of the house?
Oh, a bit of both. Yeah, I think once a teacher, always a teacher. But Yeah, I can remember summer holidays. Dad would correct exam papers, and the room he marked them in was at the front door of the house. So, it's teenagers on holidays in and out on the bikes and matches and things. We were not the quietest. And I think my poor dad was forever saying shh, shh, shh to us as we were, or my mum even was telling us to be quiet.
I was just going to say, one of our neighbours is a teacher, and like that now, you'd see the end of the school year and you think, brilliant, they're going to get loads of time off. And then you see him, I think he used to do all of his exam correcting in the front room of the house. So, on those days when the sun might be shining, you'd look in and he just
Head down. Yeah.
head down, stooped over it. How many papers would he correct?
Oh, I've no idea, Greg. It was hundreds and hundreds. And the way the system was you had to do a certain group, a sample group. And then I can remember this because, this was one of the things that was drummed into us. The first lot were a sample group, and he'd then send those off to the examiners who would just assess his marking to make sure he was being fair. And then they would come back, and once he knew that he was marking fairly, he would then go on and do the rest of them. Yeah, it was a bit of a chore that he did every year, but he did it, and suppose you need people like that to go and
Of course
mark
you do, yeah. And tell me, your mum, what did she do?
Mum looked after us, as it was in those days. Once you got married, you couldn't have a job when you were a woman. So my mum looked after the house, looked after her parents. It was forever making. Mum loves doodling and creating. She's a fantastic knitter, sewer, does a little bit of crochet occasionally too. And she used to do embroidery back in the day. So Mum kept us dressed in various outfits over the years and driving us to matches. And I'm talking like back in the 80s now. But there was, I don't know how many children piled into the back of a car when we go off to matches with hurls and helmets and boots. And I think my little brother he's 9 years younger than I am, and he was in his cot in the boot. There was no safety back then as regards child seats or anything. I guess there weren't that many cars on the road, and they were a lot slower than they are now too. But we'd have the radio on or singing along to ABBA and Michael Jackson and God knows who else. Yeah, happy memories.
That sounds like happy memories. It really does.
Yeah, like we lived in the country, and there wasn't an awful lot around at the time. You didn't have classes for this, that, and the other like children seem to have nowadays. And you made your own fun. We went off up the hills picking blackberries or making cabins out under the trees, playing with conkers, walking the dogs, going to matches. Yeah, it was a happy childhood.
And it was in the country. You weren't in the town or anything, were you?
No. We were about a mile outside of the village. And not having a TV for some years growing up, and then not having a telephone. So if you needed to make phone calls, you had to go to the local payphone in the village and queue up. And yeah, it's amazing how in the space of 40 years, things have changed so much.
That's a huge decision by family or parents. Do we do the typical thing, buy a house in a housing estate in the city or in the suburbs, or do we buy a standalone house?
It was a family home because my mum brought up there. My great-grandfather was a cooper, and his workshop was there on site, the old stone house. It's still there. And he and my granny and her brother and sister were brought up there in an old thatched cottage. And I can't remember when the date was, but that was about to fall down, really. And they got a little cottage built on site. And over the years, that was extended. So that's where we were brought up. So my grandparents lived there, and Mum and the dad moved in when they got married. And
so they were making beer barrels, were they?
Well, I don't know what sort of barrels they were making,
Yeah.
but beer barrels and water barrels for local farmers, and I guess repairing the old wheels on carts and things like that.
Yeah, one of my old bosses in Guinness, one of the early roles that he was in charge of the cooperage there, I guess, managing the stock of all of the wooden barrels and all that kind of thing, which shows you how long he was around and everything else. And that life in the country, not being in a housing estate, not having buddies next door, did you enjoy that?
We didn't know any different.
Yeah. And is that where your love of the country comes from?
Yeah, I would think so. And my gran loved being outdoors, and she had a little garden. And even in the last few years, I planted a mock orange because Granny had one in the garden. And I can remember a red squirrel coming running through the hedge at one stage. Now, I don't know where the nearest red squirrels are to us in Kilkenny anymore, but I suppose in a steag maybe. Yeah, it was just, you were out and you soaked up, yourself. There weren't any distractions like there are nowadays. We didn't have phones to be looking at every 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So our happy place was outdoors playing and getting muddy and wet and coming in worn out at the end of the day. And yeah, school, sure, we had to do that too.
And tell me the conversations around the kitchen table in your home at that stage.
Gosh, that's a tough one because I don't really remember conversations. I think children were seen and not heard that much, and you were kind of, if there was adult conversations going on, you were, sent outdoors or down to the room or whatever. Yeah, I don't really know. Matches maybe when we were teenagers. Yeah, and whatever music was on the radio and pop groups, and yeah, we had posters covering our bedroom walls, between George Michael and Bon Jovi and Bando Ballet, whoever else. Yeah, U2.
Yeah, we ended up getting to know Tony Hadley from Spandau Ballet quite well.
Yeah.
So I can, unusual. No, he was involved in an event that we used to take on tour around the country a long time ago.
Actually, we went on Sunday night. We went over to Cypress Avenue to see Big Country, if you remember.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been a huge fan. I'd have known 2 or 3 of their songs, but my husband enjoyed them. So it was the 40th anniversary of The Crossing, the first album.
Yeah.
And they were brilliant. Really, really good.
I saw them live in New York when I was 21, which is a long time ago.
And Stuart Adamson was still singing with them then, I guess.
Yeah, he was, yeah. And it was an outdoor gig. I remember my cousin, he was in New Jersey, and we went in the train and everything. I can still hear the song "In a Big Country," whatever.
Yeah. Oh, we were singing.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That was God, I didn't even see that
Oh,
gig
you missed
advertised.
that one.
Yeah,
God.
that's so annoying.
Oh, well, they are too. I think they were in Limerick the night before and probably Dublin as well. So I don't know if they're still touring in the UK.
And I'm on their mailing list, but doesn't that show you for all of our e-newsletters and our social media and all of that stuff, and we still miss out on obvious things like that. So tell me, when the young Anne is sitting in class and for whatever reason the teacher has lost your attention, where does your head drift off to?
Oh, straight out the window. Yeah, I think I was a pretty diligent student. I was, especially in secondary school, Dad being a teacher there, you were always on best behaviour because, it wouldn't do to be seen to have to go into detention or get lines. And I think I was pretty terrified of some of the older gang in secondary school. So I just kept my head down and kept out of trouble. And I was very shy as a teenager, initially anyway.
But all that changed.
Well, you kind of have to. I think that hit when I hit 50, that was a case of, sod this, lads. What's the point in worrying about what people think about you? Just get out there and be yourself and do what you want to do.
So art and horticulture, where did all that interest stir in you? Who's responsible for that, Anne?
Well, my gran and mum, definitely when it comes to the art and the making and creating. And horticulture, my gran as well. I suppose Dad, to an extent, would have had us out in the garden. I still remember caterpillars on the cabbage plants and, having to pick them off, and I could not squash them. My sister was not a bother on her. She'd squash them between her fingers, but I just couldn't do it. I'd put them in a jam jar and move them somewhere else, but I couldn't do that. Yeah, so I guess a mix of everything. My grandparents would have had interest in gardening, and Dad's dad had a little bit of land years ago. He died when I was very little, so I don't remember much about him at all. And then great-grandparents would have run pubs, so that didn't come down the line to us. I never drank in my life. I just never got into it and spent my money on going to gigs instead.
That was a good way of spending your money instead of being behind
so.
the bar pulling pints.
And I remember that as well.
Yeah. What was your best gig ever?
Oh, Queen in Slane, possibly.
Oh, wow. I never saw Queen live. Yeah.
George Michael in The Point, Prince in the RDS.
Oh my God, there's some good ones there.
And well, all the Bon Jovi ones I've been to. And you know what I really enjoy are some of the small gigs, like seeing the Hot House Flowers playing in Connolly's in Lepp, or the Four of Us playing in DeBarra's. I just love small gigs like that. Claire Sands, at the moment, she's just such a fantastic musician and a great person. So I really like going to see Claire play too. Yeah.
I had Brendan Murphy from the Four of Us on the podcast, and I talked him into starting his own. And we called it "Please Do Something," from after the song.
Yeah.
"Please Do Something."
Yeah.
And lovely guy.
Oh, they're sessions on Thursday nights. Their YouTube sessions Thursday nights. I don't know how many hundred they've done now at this stage. They're fantastic. I don't tune in every week, but every now and again, if I'm here and have an hour, I'll switch them on, and just great rapport with people and good chats.
That was a COVID thing, of course, and.
Yeah.
But Brendan would say it's changed everything for him. And I remember in that conversation I was having with him on the podcast, I was saying to him that you come down to Cork to do a gig or wherever, and I'm not seeing you posting it on social. And you go to the gig and the bloody venue is only half full. So you're depending 100% on the local venue to promote it, and if they get a crowd or whatever. So in a way, you're nearly ignoring all of your following by not being really proactive. And he kind of, that's okay. But we had a conversation after, and he was saying, yeah, you're absolutely right. And he went all in. And part of being all in was those gigs on a Thursday, those live events. And it was brilliant. And I remember going to see them in the White Horse. And it was really, really clear that the gang who were at the gig were the attendees on those Thursday nights. There was loads of in-jokes about wine and all this kind of business.
Yeah, and rubber gloves.
Yeah, exactly. So you could see, so they've created a community, which is amazing, which is all the plus side of social and everything else. My two favourite gigs were, it was always and forever, Tin Lizzy, the very first gig I saw. I was only 13. And actually, you'll be really interested in this. Tomorrow I'm doing a podcast with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Oh, what?
The artist who has done all of their amazing...
Incredible art.
So I'll allow you to be a fly in the wall for that conversation.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, that blew my mind. And I saw Roger Waters doing The Wall, and that was a few years back at the O2 or the 3 Arena, I don't even know what they call it now, in Dublin. That was more than a concert. That was a life-changing experience. It was just amazing. Okay, now, you said something. There was a statement that I saw, I think it was on your bio, and it's really powerful. You said, nature is my reason for being. It's my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge thing to say.
Well, it's our home. Nature is our home. Full stop. I brought up a Catholic, there's this thing of preparing yourself for the afterlife and for paradise. Well, sorry, lads, we're living in paradise and we need to look after it now. Simple as. Yeah, I look out the window and all I can see are fields of silage. We can't eat grass. We need to kind of get our heads around being sustainable in Ireland as regards where food security is going, because at the moment, if things go belly up, what do we have to eat in this country? Maybe a few acres of potatoes, vegetables, carrots. Our climate here is suitable for growing so much, and the horticultural industry. Now, I didn't do commercial horticulture. I did landscape horticulture, so looking at trees, shrubs, perennials. But as regards growing for commercial horticulture, yeah, I know the weather isn't helpful at the moment, but there are ways around it, and we need to become more self-sufficient in our own food. We import so much. Eating seasonally would help. That's why I love the markets. You go along and you buy what's growing locally. There's no food miles. People think, oh yeah, we can buy avocados from wherever. Well, just think of all the food miles and think of the plantations, the trees that are being chopped down to grow these plantations, and it's just not sustainable. Yeah, I won't go down that road too much because there's an awful lot going on, and I think people just want cheap food, but cheap at what cost? People put money on big TVs and this, that, and the other. And I think, well, food is the most important thing you put into you. And I don't agree with cheap food, especially if it's been sprayed to the hilt with chemicals. Like, that's going to affect your health in the long run, surely.
Yeah, just so it can travel longer and last longer.
But also killing pests and diseases. Well, if you look after the soil health is a huge issue. Soil's being depleted of a lot of nutrients, being poisoned with chemicals. If your soil is not in good condition, the crops aren't going to grow well. They're not going to have the nutrients you want, which then goes on in as regards what we're eating, that we're not getting the nutrients we need.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking again of the Skibbereen market, and it's a fantastic market with a huge variety of stalls selling all bits and bobs, and there's always the one or two old codgers there sitting at the backside of their car with the little fold-out table in front of them with their potatoes and their eggs and their carrots or whatever, and yeah, they're the best things that you can be buying, I'm absolutely sure.
And I don't know if everybody is chemical free. A lot of them are, but then there's some, I see queues around some vehicles for vegetables, and as far as I know, they're not chemical free, but I suppose at least they're supporting some local business. It's up to everybody to make that call. And I guess for me, I know I don't make a lot of money, but whatever I have, I try and spend it on good food, because I think if you don't have your health, you've got nothing.
Good idea. And landscaping and horticulture became a business for you?
It did for a little while, yeah. After I left the college in Suffolk, I stuck it out for 3.5 years and realised that teaching maybe wasn't for me.
Why?
I think I felt I wanted to be out there doing stuff rather than trying to teach people and tell people how to do it. And there was a group of young teenage lads that were doing turf grass management, and I was trying to teach them about planting hedges, and they just wanted to be on the back of a lawnmower at Ipswich Town Football Club. And we ended up having an apple fight with crab apples in the grounds of the college one day. I thought, I think it's time to go here now. So
that was a sign.
That was a sign, yeah. And David moved to North Wales. He was running a nature reserve for the Royal Society for Protection of Birds up on Anglesey. He was developing this nature reserve. It was a river valley, and they were re-wetting the whole area and making it back into a lovely wetland, and trying to bring back curlew, bittern, lapwings as breeding birds on Anglesey. And it's an incredible place. So I thought, right, I'm leaving East Anglia. I'm heading to Wales. It's at least closer to Ireland as well, and I can get home on the ferry quicker. And just wanted to be close to Dave, because it was a bit of a trek back and forth across the UK. It was probably the furthest apart we could have been, travel-wise. And having to get down to London on a train, across London, get another train to North Wales. You're travelling for 5-6 hours. And I didn't drive at the time either. So, I went up to North Wales, and I was lucky enough to get a job in a fantastic plant nursery called Krieg Farm Plants, run by Blethen and Sue and Jones, and they live near Carnarvon, and they would go plant hunting around the world looking for the most amazing plants. It was like Christmas. The boxes would arrive into the nursery, and you'd be there in the shed and unpacking these amazing things, which would immediately put into a special growing area to grow them on and propagate them. I didn't get involved with that end of it, and I started up my own little landscape business, so mainly maintaining gardens for retired people. But I had a good lot of, enough to keep me going. I had the lawnmower in the boot with all the tools, and off I go every day. I passed my driving test at that stage, which did help. And I had some amazing people I used to do gardens for, including one man, Cuffin Williams. Well, Sir Cuffin Williams. He was a Welsh artist in his 90s. Absolutely lovely man. And he referred to me once as his horticultural advisor, which was like, yeah, that's a nice ring to it. But yeah, really lovely people. Some of them fed me my dinner in the middle of the day. And I don't know if you've ever tried gardening on a full stomach, which in an afternoon you feel like curling up under a hedge rather than weeding or digging or whatever. But I enjoyed that time. But I got sick then. I developed what was a repetitive strain injury. I got really painful arms. I guess from all the heavy work I was doing, people don't know exactly. It's just one of those things. And I had to stop. And yeah.
What was it called? I heard you saying it at the beginning.
Fibromyalgia is what the consultant told me it was. If people want a name for it, it was just very, it still is. You know, if I do anything repetitive, I was out in the garden doing some work the other day and came in and achy arms for most of the night and next day. But I'm not letting that stop me. If I have a few aches and pains, I'll just keep going. But at the time, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't close my hands. I couldn't drive. I was really in a bad way, a lot of pain. And I tried, I don't know how many different things over the years to try and help. I don't know whether they did or not, but I think eating healthily is definitely one of the things, and being out in nature and having the dogs and just taking each day as it comes, I think.
That must have been a big blow for you, because as well as being sick, it was kind of robbing you of who you were and what you did, robbing you of your identity, and trying to reinvent yourself then must have been, you know, obviously you were debilitated with the condition, but I think even more than that, it's like, who am I? And trying to reinvent yourself. Was that a dark hole, or how did you start to crawl out of it?
Well, it seemed like a dark hole at the beginning, especially, you know, not being able to get out of bed and having to crawl on your bum across the bed to fall out on the floor and then pick yourself up to get to the bathroom. Now, Dave couldn't stay at home. He was out working all day, but we had a really good bunch of friends, and they'd turn up and they'd say, come on, when I gradually could at least walk a bit better, come on, we'll go out for a spin up in the mountains. As I say, being out in nature really helped, and going down the nature reserve with Dave and counting the birds and planting reeds, trying to grow reed seedlings. You know, gradually I started doing a little bit. And then I found out that there was a course, access to art course in the local college. And I thought, well, here's something I know, I'll give it a go. And did a little bit of everything, a bit of ceramics, a bit of life drawing, textile work, and enjoyed that. And from that I went on and did a part-time higher national diploma course in the same college, Colleague Menai, near Bangor, and tried lots of different things, really enjoyed it. Struggled with the computing end of things because, you know, fingers typing was not great. But I got through it, and I managed to get a distinction at the end through creating small sculptural baskets. I worked with fibres because I could manage the soft fibres. It was repetitive work, but I could put it down and come back to it when I was able. And I ended up taking the baskets to New Designers exhibition in London, which was an experience. And then I took them to Chelsea Craft Fair a few years later, and I got awards from them with the National Eisteddfod of Wales, which is the creative show in Wales, and also the National Crafts Competition in the RDS. So, you know, they kind of started me on the path I'm on now, if you like, in that I felt like I could try and make a living from art. But little baskets aren't, you know, they're great if somebody's going to collect them and you can find somebody who'll support you that way. But they're not very commercial. They're not functional. They're sculptural pieces. So I was trying to find other ways of making a living. So I was doing workshops in schools. I got involved with, when we moved to West Cork, I got involved with the Arts for Health programme down here.
What brought you back to Cork? I wasn't back to Cork either because you weren't from here.
No, I lived in Cork. My grandparents on dad's side, his dad was from Bantry, and his grandparents, one was from near Glengarriff and the other was between Bantry and Dromore. So there was a bit of a magnetic pull to Cork, I think. And having the surname Harrington as well, and seeing Harringtons all over the place, you know, you felt like you were at home. And to this day, I love going down to Bantry and Glengarriff. Your heart kind of swells and lifts when you go down that way. Like my great grandparents and my great uncle are buried in the graveyard in Bantry in the Abbey Cemetery. And I just love to go up there and sit at the grave and look out over the bay. It's a very peaceful place.
It's stunning area.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then going down to where my great granddad was from, just southwest of Glengarriff, down to Zetland Pier was one seemingly place he liked to go to. And that's gorgeous down there. It's really lovely. But yeah, coming back to Ireland, I don't know. We just thought we'd give it a go at one stage. And I had left home in 1992. So I always thought I'd come back home. I didn't think I'd be in the UK as long as I was. And I always wanted to come back and play hurling. No, I didn't. I didn't get to go back playing hurling. Like I played a lot in UCD when I was there and enjoyed it. But just coming back home and being part of that whole community was great.
Yeah, when was that?
We moved back in 2006. Dragged Dave kicking and screaming with me.
And was that a big shopping expedition for houses and picking out a place and everything? Or how did you settle where you...
At that stage? No. Initially, we were based up just outside Dublin. Dave got a job with a firm of engineers in Blanchardstown. So I was very, very grateful to a friend of mine. Her mum and dad had a gate lodge. We were friends since university days, and we rented their lodge from them and lived there for a year. And then moved down this way because we always wanted to move down to West Cork. And it took a while to find somewhere because at the time we were looking to foster or adopt some dogs. And around 2007, I spotted a pair of lurcher sisters at Drogheda Animal Rescue. And
was that Luna and Sarah?
Luna and Sarah. Yeah, Luna and Sarah. Yeah, that's them. Beautiful girls. And as soon as I saw them online, I was like, they're the two. I've got to go see them.
So, fell in love.
Fell in love, oh, big time. Hook, line and sinker with those two. Yeah. I have a photograph of them here behind me with Dave and myself.
We just borrowed them for a while, Anne, don't we?
Yeah, that's it. We do. Very much so.
And they teach us a lot in the process.
And introduce us to so many people too. So yeah, we were moving to West Cork and needed somewhere that would allow us to have dogs, and we found one place. And the day we moved in, the landlord's brother arrived on the door to say, sorry, you can't have dogs. So the letting agent had told us a big porky pie of a lie. But I will let it go sometime. At the time it was, oh my God, what are we going to do now? So we thankfully found somewhere in Timoleague, and the people there were absolutely amazing, and forever grateful to them for allowing us rent their house with the two dogs. And we spent a wonderful 5 years in Timoleague. House prices were skyrocketing. We hadn't a hope of affording anything. And then the crash happened. And, we were looking online every day for somewhere with a little bit of a garden. And we found our house. We're just a quarter of an hour north of Clonakilty now, and in the countryside, surrounded by fields. And we've got an acre of garden, which it was blank canvas, really. So we put in a native hedge, we put in a pond. Over the last 11 years, you take your time. You can't do it all in one go. We're not one of these instant gardeners. That's not how nature works. It takes time, and you have to get to know your site. So yeah, we've put in a polytunnel and some raised beds for vegetables, some fruit trees. There's enough ground for the dogs to run around like mad things and play hurling. And then when the silage is put next door, we can take them in there and play as well. So it's good. Yeah. And the neighbours are fantastic. Got really good bunch of neighbours too.
Yeah, fantastic. How did you go about commercialising your art qualification and your passion?
Yeah, that took a little while too. I was doing some lino prints and enjoying those, trying to make, a go of it that way. But again, the physicality of carving was causing issues with the fibromyalgia. So I went and spoke to a business advisor through the local enterprise office, a lady called Jackie Gower, and I don't know, you probably know Jackie. And she was great. She said to me, because I brought in all of the drawings that I'd done, and she said, look, you've got so much stuff here. You need to monetize them. Go research how to do it and find out. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not into consumers and I'm not into selling stuff. And she said, look, you need to make a living somehow. Just do it. So it was the kick up the bum I needed, basically. Because, I'm not into consumerism and being up to date with all the stuff. But at the same time, you do need to bring in some money, and you do need to have a way of surviving. So I started researching, and I came across Rachel Taylor, who is a designer in the UK, and she had an online course, Make It in Design. And I looked into that more, and it was basically digitizing your drawings and then putting them onto surfaces. So be it fabric or ceramics or whatever it was that you wanted to specialize in. So for me, I've always been sewing and I've always been creating things. So fabric was sometimes at stashes of the stuff here still. Not sure what I'm going to do with it, but I will someday. And I thought, right, well, I'll give this a go. So I paid my money over and did 3 modules of her Make It in Design course, and bought a subscription to Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator and started off on that. So yeah, digitized my drawings and started working around playing with patterns and creating repeat patterns or placement prints. Like a lot of what I do are placement prints. I like just the graphic quality of a single image and the contrast of colors and building up the layers. So having the main image, but layers behind it. So some might be just outlines of the leaves or the flowers or textures that I find. And I've been doing that now since 2018. So Christmas 2018, Court McSherry was my very first market. A borrowed tent, yeah, a borrowed tent and borrowed fold-up tables. Yeah, really in at the deep end.
How did you feel that day?
I was excited, really excited to see what people would think. And I only started off with a few products. I didn't have very much to start off with, just a few tea towels. I think I had a few cushion covers as well. Like that, what I love about the markets is you're out there talking to people who are buying your stuff and they feedback, we like this, we don't like this. How have you thought about such and such? I'd never have done wall hangings, only I had the fuchsia tea towel. I produced a big banner, a really long banner, because I did Bloom in 2019. I thought, right, in at the deep end, why not? Just go for it. And a lot of people were coming up to me saying, that is really striking. Why don't you do wall hangings? So I've done a series of them based on that. And that has then led on to commissions for people as well. And I've just finished one for a family, because I've launched Luna's Legacy, which, a deep breath before I talk about Luna, but she was ill in 2018 and we very sadly had to have her put to sleep. She had cancer and it was very sudden. And I thought, I have to do something, because she had such a big impact on her lives, herself and Saren. And I had this photograph of her lying on the beach at Ballyquin near Ardmore. And I just loved the photograph and the colours of her and the sea and the sky. And she loved eating kelp. I don't know if if they're on the beach, they grab stems of kelp, but she was always chewing on it. I guess there's sugar in the kelp stems. So I created this pattern based on the colours of that photograph and her love of kelp. And what I'm doing now is using that as an image to promote Luna's Legacy, whereby people dealing with pet loss and the grief of pet loss can commission me to create a piece of artwork based on their lives with their animal. And it's not a portrait. I don't do portraits. There's some fantastic people out there doing amazing animal portraits. It's more of a design based on their lives with their animals. So places they've been, things they've done, things that the animal liked, and creating this image that they can then have either as a wall hanging or a bag or a cushion cover, whatever. And a percentage of all of those commissions will go to animal rescue charities. So that's the legacy of Luna. So I'm going to Pet Expo in Dublin in 2 weeks' time and promoting it and see how we get on. But pet loss, I think Ray Darcy was talking about it on the radio yesterday. Somebody texted me to tell me and I missed it, but I'll catch it again. But it's such a big thing. And when we lost her, the grief you go through is incredible. I don't know, people listening will have gone through it. But sometimes it's almost like, unless you've been through it, you can't feel, you don't understand it. Unless you've had an animal in your life who's been like your sidekick 24/7, they're your family. And then suddenly they're gone.
Yeah, and I think home working and COVID accelerated that for an awful lot of people. So at a time when you weren't seeing anyone, like my little buddy, he's still here alongside me.
Mm.
And it's weird. And for dog lovers, you've been there, the minute you start talking about your dog, we have something in common. And
Mm.
I'll have the phone up, and of course, the wallpaper on my phone is a picture of Honey. Not Deirdre, which it probably should be, or a picture of me and Deirdre. And I know on her phone, it's Bert.
Yeah, well, I have the two. Well, I have between screensavers and what pictures on phones. And some people, we've never had children, but some people, their phones are full of their children. Well, ours are full of the dog. Well, mine are full of the dogs anyway. You're out there, you're trying to capture the moment. And I'd say to people, if you have an animal, just take some video of them, take photographs, because you never know. They're not going to live forever, and their lives are far too short. And you were right, we borrow them for a period of time, and they just impact so much on our lives.
Depth of that relationship and that feeling, I'll be quite honest with you, it scares me at times. I'm thinking how much I love these two creatures.
But it's unconditional love, isn't it? You could go outside for 2 seconds and you come back in and it's like they haven't seen you for years. The tails are going and the whole body is shaking and they're there. It's like, they're just full of love, and you can never feel sad when you have a dog around you. Well, you can, but you can't feel sad forever because they just give you so much love and joy.
So you were talking about your products, and I'm going to give you some feedback now. And the tea towels are too good to use as tea towels. That's what I bought. Beautiful design from you that day in the market. And I thought, no, it cannot be used. And I was instructed by Jared, we are not using that to dry.
But they're not for soggy dishes anyway. They don't soak up. They're more for glass cloths. And I know people do frame them or use them as tray cloths or whatever. A lot of people do use them to display them, and they use clip frames and hang them up. So they're like mini wall hangings, really, but because they're tea towel size.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and they're amazing. They're amazing. Now, another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I know there's a little kind of product or a service, I'm not sure. And while we're talking about the dogs and mental health and everything, I wanted to talk to you about green sketching. What is that for the listener?
Green sketching is something I've only come across in the last few months. And actually, it was Rachel Taylor's email, the Make It in Design email that come through, and they suggest things to look at. And it was I suppose the whole idea was put together by Ali Foxon, lady in the UK, who had been working within scientific areas in Europe to do with climate change. And she was suddenly, I can't be dealing with this anymore. It's really getting her down. And she was living away from home. She had a young baby. She was outside and struggling to come to terms with being on her own and not having all of the supports. And she just picked up a sketchbook one day, because she had been quite artistic, she said, in her youth, and she used to like drawing. But it was, again, you do the science, you don't earn a living out of art. You go do the scientific course. And she came back to art, and she said she just started drawing. And she said it was a few lines on the page, but it got her out of her head, and just she was in the moment, and she felt that her mood was improving. She was out in nature. Could just be for 10 minutes every day. So green sketching, as she explains it, it's not a way of teaching somebody to draw. It's a way of teaching somebody to see what's around them and see the beauty in nature. And anybody can do it. You don't have to be artistic. You just need a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. And you go out there and you look at something closely. Because you say to somebody, draw a holly leaf, and they'll draw the quintessence, the pointy leaves and maybe 3 spikes on either side. But you look at a holly leaf, it doesn't look like that at all. The holly leaf has spines pointing off in all directions. It's like a 3-dimensional leaf. And it doesn't have the same number of spines on either side. So when you start looking at things, they're completely different to what we think they are in their head. So for her, it's a way of getting people to be out in nature, seeing the beauty that's around us, really seeing it, not just thinking, I know what it is, and spending time, maybe just 10 minutes every day, of putting pen, pencil on paper and drawing whatever it is that catches your eye. It's finding joy in the things around you. And hopefully by being out in nature, that improves your well-being, improves your concentration, improves your memory, lifts your spirits, and all of the things that have been proven, all the benefits of nature that have been proven over the years.
Yeah, because I had a guest on the podcast who was struggling around mental health and everything, and they spent a spell in hospital, I guess being recuperating and getting their mental health back again. And one of the things that he said was key to him was art therapy while he was in hospital. And I suppose if you can add that dimension of being out and about in nature to that practice of drawing, I'm sure that takes it to a totally new level. Are you running workshops in that?
Yeah, like I found out about it and I thought this is something that is really ringing lots of bells, and I thought I have to find out more. And I've only just done the training with Ali, so in the next few weeks and months, I will be looking into venues and starting to organise some events. And it's to gather a few people together, or individuals if they wish, to come out and start looking at things and finding the joy in what they're seeing around them and guiding them. It's not this is how you draw. That's not what it is.
Yeah, it's get out of your head, observe, appreciate nature.
Yeah.
So I told you at the beginning we were talking about the Skibbereen market, and maybe we might come back to it. What do you love most about the market? Because I know it's more than just the Skibbereen market that you sell your wares at.
Oh, it's the community. There's such a fantastic bunch of people, really supportive. Right from day one when I turned up at Skibbereen market, well, any of the markets, but Skib in particular, the group where we are up underneath the supermarket, it's like a little village of our own up there, because we're not in the middle of the market. We're out on our own a little bit. And not everybody even knows we exist, because they come to the top and think, all right, there's nothing else. But if you're ever in Skibbereen Market, come up to the top and turn right and you'll find a whole new world up there. There beautiful jewellery, some crochet work and garden ornaments, bric-a-brac, antiques, beautiful old tools, toys for children. Yeah, there's a whole mix, and then I'm in the middle of them all as well. So we help each other put the tents up, we help take them down. If we can't help a customer, we pass them on to somebody else. And the banter and the crack that goes on back and forth between chatting about music, the weather, sport, hurling, rugby. Yeah. It's a day out. And for me, as I work at home all day, every day, Saturday in Skib is my social day out, where I get to see people, because the dogs can't really talk back to me. So, well, they do, but not in a way that I necessarily understand the whole time. But yeah, it's a very sociable few hours on a Saturday.
Yeah. And it's part of your business model. It's one of the ways that people can access your products.
Exactly. And, you talk about business model. I've never kind of gone out and said, right, this is what I'm, it kind of happened. And I very much go with the flow a lot of the time with my business stuff. And yeah, I do Ballymaloe Market the craft fair coming up now in November. I'm going to County Carlow this weekend. There's a festival on there, so I'm going to do Hidden Hearts Festival, the market there. It's a wellness festival. I've done Bloom. I occasionally will have done Mountain View Market up near home in Kilkenny, which is a fantastic market up there. And then little small ones around. So there's one coming up in Lissard in December. I've done Bantry in December. O'Donovan's Hotel in Clonakilty. So, there's so many markets going on, especially this time of the year. You'd run yourself ragged. And also, of course, Myros Wood in Lepp. I don't know if you've been into Seacas, the old Missionaries of the Sacred Heart place there.
Not yet.
No, well, you'll have to. It's another one on the list. We've actually just opened a little shop there, a few of us, called the Courtyard Collective. A few of us were doing the market there, and a room became available. So we thought, why not give it a go? So we're renting the room up until Christmas.
How's it going?
We'll see how we get on. It's quiet. It's a quiet time of the year, but we're only in early days, and we need to kind of get set up with card payments and all of that kind of thing. So that's happening, and that will help. And signage on the road will help too.
And it's so important. And I know from being down in West Cork, it's so fantastic to see people occupying those little properties, selling their bits and bobs. It gives you another thing to do in that area. And it gives you a reason for staying there. I think it's like a public service at times.
Well, this organisation have taken over the building and they run some amazing events there. And we have a market there roughly once a month in the summer, and then Halloween and again at Christmas in their courtyard at the back. And there's a lovely woodland around that they're restoring. There's walks all the way down to the dog appearing. There's walks all the way down to the water's edge. There's a walled garden. And you can walk through from left the whole way through the grounds and onto Union Hall. So a lot of local people would walk through there every day.
Okay.
So it's good to see the building being used. There's an antiques shop, The Very Thing. They've just opened on one corner of the building. Barry and Vicky are running that there, and they would have done markets and still do the markets too. So there's the antique shop there, and then we're in the room next to them. So there's a through flow, which is nice. And some people come for the antiques, some for the craft, and some come for both.
Yeah, so and in the middle of everything, there's a creative community who like opening things and trying things and everything else. And I think people can access your products. There's a number of stockists, isn't there?
There are a few, yeah. Like Green Dot and Clonakilty stocks my tea towels. Sinead Hannon up in Ballyduff has just opened there in the Ballyduff storehouse, I think it's called. So she's got a few things there. I think that's all at the moment. I think Forest and Flock had a few things last Christmas. But mainly it's from my website and my market stalls.
Okay, so people can buy online and everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And you mentioned the commissions as well.
I get everything printed in Ireland. So my fabric is printed by Pixelilly in Donegal. And paper prints are printed by the factory in County Offaly. So it's important to keep it all printed in Ireland.
So just for the listener, how can people follow you? What's the web address?
The web address is anneharringtonreesdesigns.ie. So Anne with an E. At Anne Harrington Rees on Instagram. I think it's at AHR Designs on Twitter. And I'm on LinkedIn as well at Anne Harrington Rees. So
now,
that's me.
You're on the Win Happy podcast. What is happiness to you, Anne?
Happiness to me is, lots of things. Spending time with my husband and the dogs, being out, and this is my happy place. My garden is my happy place. I'm not out there right now because the connection, the signal doesn't extend that far, but definitely been out in the garden because it's as wildlife friendly as I can make it. And that is a very happy place for me. Being with my family, shouting, cheering on the Shamrocks hurling team, going to live music gigs, eating good food, being with friends, and creating.
That's a nice recipe for happiness, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of everything. I don't get kind of too entrenched in one thing.
And if I was to add the word winning onto all of that, achieving some of those objectives, what do you want to achieve? What would winning look like for you?
Winning for me, okay. I think helping more people get off their phones and get out and enjoy nature and realize that this is our paradise and we need to look after it and respect nature and try and bring back the wild places and realize it's not all about, well, I was going to say making money. I think it's more owing money to the banks. But yeah, leaving those wild places because they are important. They're part of us. We're part of them. Yeah.
And I have one last whopper of a question for you. Are you ready for this one? What was your best day ever?
Oh my God. Best day ever. I'd have to say the day we were married, I think, because it was just surrounded by so much love and family and friends and dancing. And I played hurling that day too.
I thought with the acre there might have been a little mini hurling pitch and a goal post. No.
Well, there is in the winter because we have we've hay meadows front and back. We create a lot of around the trees and around the back of the garden. So once the hay is cut, which we just managed to do this week, then there is space for playing hurling in the garden. But ordinarily know. Well, we do. The ball gets lost, but yeah, there's always for hurling.
Yeah. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing you again at one of the markets. It'll probably be one of the Christmas ones at this stage. I'm not sure.
Yeah, or even if you venture over to Ballymaloo one of the weekend, I'll be there the first weekend anyway. So if you venture over that way.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and that'd be great to meet up again. Thank you, Greg. It's been lovely.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.